This is a KSLA First Alert Weather Day.
And it certainly has turned into a stormy night in the ArkLaTex. That's a live look outside. Looking out into Bossier, you can see the raindrops on the camera lens. You see that big bolt of lightning right there. And that really has been the story over the last several hours. These storms are just really increasing across the area. And look at this. We now have a tornado watch for southeastern portions of the ArkLaTex, including Sabine and Natchitoches Parish. And notice the time on this. 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. This could go throughout much of the night. So it's going to be a long night across parts of the ArkLaTex because the back edge of this line is still well off to our west, and this thing is barely moving. So we're going to be in this for a long time, unfortunately, with that severe threat. Let's zoom into Shreveport and Bossier. We just had a big line come through our area. It was not severe, but it did bring a lot of torrential rain and a lot of cloud to ground lightning. And also, a lot of this rain that we're seeing is actually good news for us because, again, we're still in those drought conditions right now. Take you to the south here. We're seeing some strong storms here just north of I-49, just to the northwest of Coshada here. And again, that will continue to make its way eastward. And then look off to our west, a big line here in East Texas. And again, the back edge of this is way out to our west around Tyler. So that's why we still have several more hours to go with all of this. And the severe threat area really hasn't changed. We're really going to monitor those areas along and south of I-20 for that severe risk as we head through the overnight hours. Large hail, damaging winds, and yes, the potential we could still see a few tornadoes out there, especially in the southeast portions of the ArkLaTex. So here's a look at future track. We'll take you into the overnight hours. There's midnight. Notice still very widespread storms across the area, so we're not going to see this wind down anytime soon. Take you to 2 o'clock in the morning. Still dealing with those storms, especially in the eastern half of the ArkLaTex. And we get past that, finally quieting down by about 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to be a long night, especially in those southeast parishes. And then we're going to luckily see some much quieter weather here for much of your Saturday. All right, let's take a look at that 7-day forecast here. 56 degrees for tomorrow. So as we cool off behind that front, we're going to see a strong northwest wind kick in. And that's going to bring in some much cooler and drier air. Check out those overnight lows, 38 as we get into tomorrow night. And then we get into Sunday, a high of 60 down to 33 Sunday night. So it's going to get pretty chilly. 60 on Monday, 67 Tuesday. You'll see overnight lows pretty cold. And then we will start to warm back up as we get into next week. But yeah, we're in this, and it's going to be, this could last throughout much of the night.
Well, I was driving back home from my dinner break, and I don't think I've driven through more intense rain since I've lived here than what I drove through tonight. Very heavy rain. Very heavy rainfall, and so that's going to be the main threat, although there still is that severe risk. We'll be here all night. All right. Thank you, Matt. Yep. Well, our top stories are coming up after the break. Stay with us. A big change in the HPV vaccine recommendation could mean more people get protected, but there's a catch, especially here in South Louisiana, or across Louisiana, I should say. We'll tell you why regular checkups are very crucial.
Now, streaming live, this is KSLA News Now.
Welcome back. You're watching KSLA News Now at 9. I'm Jeff Horchak. Here are your top stories. New in our first alert crime tracker at 9. A Shreveport man is in jail tonight after a reported stabbing in Natchitoches. Now, police tell us 52-year-old Lloyd Pallette is charged with attempted second-degree murder and an aggravated second-degree battery after 2 people were found with stab wounds on Airport Road on New Year's Day. The 2 victims were taken to Natchitoches Regional Medical Center for their injuries. Also in your crime tracker, a former Marshall ISD teacher was sentenced after pleading guilty to an improper relationship with a student. Margaret Claire Burris, 25, received 180 days in jail and 10 years probation. She began her jail sentence immediately at the Upshur County Jail and is expected to be released in July. On July 7th. Now, Burris was arrested in February of 2024 after Marshall police were notified that she sent sexually explicit text messages to a 16-year-old student. The tip came from Marshall ISD Superintendent Rochelle Langley, who learned of the relationship from Margaret Burris's former father-in-law, Marshall ISD Board President Brad Burris. Now, investigators found text messages and sexually explicit photos on the student's cell phone. A federal judge has set a tentative date of September 8th for the trial of the man accused of gunning down a United Healthcare CEO in 2024. The ruling came today when Luigi Mangione returned to a federal courtroom for a hearing in New York City. Now, his lawyers also pushed to stop the federal government from seeking the death penalty against him for the killing. Judge Margaret Garnett is expected to rule on that on a later date. Mangione's attorneys also want the judge to throw out another gun charge. Mangione has pled not guilty in the case. Well, keeping you health aware, the U.S. House of Representatives is saying yes to extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies after expiring last month. But as millions of Americans wait for a final decision, they could soon face higher medication costs this year. Over 20 million people get insurance, health insurance through the ACA, but without subsidies, medication prices will skyrocket, forcing them to make some tough decisions regarding their health care. Now, local pharmacies in Shreveport tell KSLA the drug companies typically raise prices in the beginning of the year. However, they say it's too early to know if the increase is sufficiently higher due to the lack of ACA subsidies. Now, ACA subsidies greatly decrease medication costs, especially for low-income Americans. And as District A Representative Councilwoman Tabitha Taylor says, she hopes the Senate will vote to keep subsidies so Shreveport residents can afford health care costs.
Americans need to have access to quality health insurance, and it should not be at a point that the cost is so astronomical that they're not able to live.
Now, it's unknown when the Senate will vote to extend ACA subsidies, but the final decision will need 60 votes of approval to pass. And coming up at 10 o'clock, KSLA News 12's Kim Nagomo tells us what health care resources are available at a low cost. Well, tonight we're making you health aware about Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. And here in Louisiana, we rank 7th for the death rates as a result of this cancer. That's according to the Louisiana Department of Health. Now, it's typically caused by HPV, which just got a new vaccine recommendation. The HPV vaccine recommendation has been bumped down from 2 doses to 1. But one OBGYN says that could mean an increase in our completion rates. And she says right now in the state, we're about 40 to 60% compliant for both doses. But with one less, it could mean more people will get it since they will not be committing to a series. She also says that studies show the vaccine does not target the most common strains of HPV in southern Louisiana, which reiterates the importance of getting a pap smear to check for those abnormalities, because the earlier, of course, you get checked, the better.
And the beautiful thing about pap smears is you don't have to get it every year anymore. If your pap smear is normal, you can go somewhere between 3 and 5 years if you've had normal pap smears. With pap smears, now that we do pap screening and HPV screening, it sort of gives patients more information about what's going on, and it kind of empowers them in a way that we didn't have that information before.
She says the HPV vaccine was also recently approved for adults ages 26 to 45, but you'll need 3 shots instead of the newly recommended 1 for adolescents. Well, thanks for joining us for our Fastcast. We'll see you back here at 10 o'clock. Make sure you download the KSLA News 12 app for the latest news, weather, and sports. And here's a live look at I-20 at Airline Drive. Not a lot of traffic out there tonight. If you're out on the roads, be very careful with this heavy rain. We'll see you at 10.